I met David Schultz in March in Optimal 2022, and he delivered a keynote on his procurement vision.
I learn all the time, and I was very impressed with you and the team that I met in New York as well.
How are we going to manage our supply chain in the recent time when the cost is going up?
So I think you need to pick, a particular area that you want to improve. And then I think you need to just move forward on it quickly. And I say that because I'm very big on cost of delay, you call it. There's a metric that I call COD, and that's cost of delay.
This video is brought to you by us, SCMDOJO. We provide awesome courses, guides, best practices for supply chain community.
Hi folks, welcome to one more episode of the Supply Chain Show. Today I'm going to talk about what are the key challenges for the Chief Supply Chain Officer of a Chief Procurement Officer. And that's a very heavy topic, right? Because I think all CPOs and CSOs are very, very smart and very experienced people. But post-COVID, I think there are the circumstances or the market conditions which is new, and there's not real theory in place or not much knowledge in place. So today I have a special guest. I have David Schultz with me. He is a seasoned CPO, Chief Supply Chain Officer. He is right now working for Westfall Technique, right? That's the company he's working for, the Chief Supply Chain Officer. Procurement comes under his responsibilities as well. I met David Schultz in March in Optimal 2022, and he delivered a keynote on his procurement vision, which really inspired me. And I think there's a lot more people, especially the whole supply chain community and all the followers of supply chain should listen to David Schultz, what he has to say, because I think he's a very, very great and inspirational speaker, in my opinion, right? David, welcome on board. How are you, sir?
Very good. And thank you for having me today. I look forward to contributing as best I can.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we just jump on it, right? We just keep the conversation, informal, just more in the conversation style. Just walk me through, based on what happened after COVID, right? Or basically in general, in the recent times, what are the biggest challenges of your job as a Chief Supply Chain Officer?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'd like to say that maybe I have some things to say, but I also have some things to learn, and I learn all the time. And I was very impressed with you and the team that I met in New York as well. But just getting right into it, I'd like to sort of just talk about a couple of things, and maybe not. We'll leave some of the blinding glimpse of the obvious things on the side of the road and talk about some things that I think are, staring us right in the face. I think the main thing right now is business continuity. Okay. And some of these things are not going to be revelations, but it's really about business continuity. And I think as you look into sort of not, getting back to normal, but the next normal, as they say, I believe a lot of it has to do with a different mindset for the supply chain folks and chief procurement officers. And I think that mindset really is going to revolve around general management skills. I think the more folks that can have general management skills in today's market are really going to succeed. No longer can you be just an expert sort of in one area because there's a lot of different things happening around us. And I think no longer also can we use the excuse of COVID or inflation, or things of that nature. I think many of us have hidden behind that for a while. And that was valid maybe for the first couple of months of the next normal. But now we've had a couple of years of it already. And I think what we need to do is do a little introspection in our own organizations and say, were we set up for it? And if we weren't, how are we getting to be set up for it in the future? And what are we doing to mitigate, the challenges that we had within our own organizations, as opposed to, laying the blame outside of our own organizations?
Yeah. I think you made a very good point on this whole inflation or the COVID excuses. I mean, I left working for corporations in last year, September, so I'm not out of the game. And I talk to the people right now. Is still they keep saying, okay, how are we going to manage our supply chain in the recent time when the cost is going up? And you can see, especially the markets who are trading into Wall Street or maybe in the FTSE, they are not meeting their forecast. They are not hitting their numbers, right? And then they're still blaming the inflation and the freight cost is going up. But I think how are we going to get out of this? Or first point. And second, okay, let's assume some of the challenges are there because their cost is going up. The chip manufacturing, the plastics availability, the food cost is going up, fuel prices, so that's happening. So how these cheaper supply chain officers are going to position themselves, because the pressure of the cost will always be there, right? Unfortunately, right? And you still have to drive some kind of competitive advantage. Therefore, you need some kind of innovation, either process innovation or system innovation or people innovation. I don't know, right? So how, first of all, let's give it a background of get out of those excuses and how the CSOs are going to position themselves to still deliver the value which is expected of you guys, basically.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question and difficult one to answer. But I will say that this is probably the first year, I think those of us who look at maybe the Deloitte survey and other surveys that are out there, that the digital transformation is actually on the agenda above cost reduction.
Very good.
Now, this is the first time ever, and it's an important situation. By no means am I saying that cost reduction is not important, and there's cost avoidance and things of that nature. But more and more, when I get back to my theme about sort of having that general manager mentality, more and more is the collaboration now between the commercial side of the business and the supply chain side. So I would say I spend 35% of my day at minimum dealing with the sales folks, dealing with the front end of the business. How are we handling things? And I would say the best way to handle that from a process standpoint, and I've been a proponent for this for a while, but it's not usually run in many organizations. And I know you're an expert at this, and it's really the S&OP process. It's the sales and operations planning process. And I'm not saying that because you gave an excellent talk about that in New York, but the sales and operations planning process, in my opinion, has become front and center. That's what it's all about. It's about satisfying your customer. And the sales folks now no longer just think that magic happens in the background in supply chain and it'll work it all itself out. And at the same time, I think the people at the customer end, they understand the challenges we're going through as well. So if you can open up that collaboration, that communication, every big item I've ever seen in business can be solved around communication. And the more communication that can happen in that way, the better. But we have to understand their challenges and they understand ours. And that's why I think, as we look for new talent in the supply chain area, I'm looking for folks that, either have had or are looking to broaden their expertise around a general manager type skill set, because you need to know the finance side, you need to know the sales side, you need to know the procurement side. No longer can you just focus on one area because you won't understand how all sides of it fit together.
I mean, the way the few points you mentioned, I can talk a lot about it, but I'm going to pick 2 points on it.
Sure.
So as S&OP is definitely, because it's the only cross-functional project, right? And once you are into challenging times that you cannot forecast your demand, S&OP is the only process which is going to bring close to the sales folks, the customer, understand the changes and bring it down to the operational changes. So if you do not have any S&OP process, you rightly said, you're not going to be agile enough. People talk about agility, people talk about resilience. You can't do any of that unless you have this kind of process in place, as you rightly said. But one more, I'm going to connect this with the point you're making a few times on being a general manager. So what does general management mean? That means you got to know more about your functional expertise, right? That means you got to know about the sales and how the finance functions or product development. And the demand planning folks, in my view, which I'm hiring a demand planner, I hire a person who has a good business skills and some analytical skills. So you can really collaborate better. So while I 120% agree with you that your general management skills, or let's call it business acumen, needs to improve, but yes, how are we gonna basically encourage our supply chain? I'm sure, I don't know how many people work for you, but I'm sure you have a team available. So how are you gonna encourage themselves to gain that cross-functional, general management skill?
Yeah, no, good question. I think it comes with, general traditional training, but also putting them in the conversations, having them get in the conversations. There's disadvantages and advantages of, being remote. One of the advantages is you can pull people in at any time that you would like. And, they can observe and they can listen and they can learn and they can contribute as well. So I think the cross training really needs to happen at a higher, pace. And then I think the on the job sort of focus can really be beneficial. You don't have to invite them. You don't have to have them travel to a sales meeting. They can, attend it maybe virtually. Now, I also don't want to minimize the value of in-person relationships. And that's one of the biggest challenges with this next normal. If we're going to transform the supply chain, in many cases, that involves bringing a new supplier base on board, new suppliers with new skill sets. But in order to bring them on board, through the COVID era and so forth, there was a situation where it was difficult to choose, say, supplier audits. And you can maybe only do them, online or what have you. And that may not cut it. So there's another level of challenges, but I think it's up to us to find ways to overcome those challenges. And when you start talking about that integrated S&OP process, that aligns the CPO's agenda with the CEO's agenda. Because when you get into that executive S&OP meeting, it starts all the way from the top to say, here's how we're going to prioritize what we need to get done, and here's how we're going to make things happen. And I think what we've run ourselves into over the last couple of years is we've moved from what I'll call, when you start talking about inventory, we moved from a JIT approach, a just-in-time approach, to a JIC approach, just in case. And the just-in-case inventory has built up dramatically, and much of it in the wrong places. So those of us who read a lot, you see what's happening with Target and Walmart. They've announced just recently they have far too much inventory on hand. And the president of Walmart just recently said that if he could magically get rid of 20% of his inventory in the US, he would obliterate it. That's how much extra inventory they have. So it's the bullwhip effect. We all talk about that. But at the same time, the pendulum has swung, too far the other way. So I think we really need to look internally at our processes. Yes, there are external things that we can't control, but we have to start looking internally to say, what can we fix in our own processes and make sure our own house is clean before we point to problems with others.
You know what? I like odd numbers. If you see all my blogs, I like mostly odd numbers with people. And I think there's very interesting 5 themes that's coming out, what you mentioned so far. And if I write a blog, I will pick this, 5 challenges which all CSO. One is the improve the general management skills of people. Absolutely agree. The second is all the benefits you explained, and we both of them align on the sales and operation planning, which is alignment with the sales guys, with the finance folks, having a one forecast, have more agile supply chain. Great, 100% agree. That leads to the more digital transformation of the business. I'll come back to that point a bit more, but I'm just writing down, definitely this is the place to go, and both of us can talk about it a lot. And when we hit this kind of challenges, only improved communication can actually get you out of it, right? Remotely, so all the CSOs need to find a way to improve the better communication. It's no longer excuse that, okay, we work remotely and blah, 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 right? So I don't think,
right.
This part you mentioned on the JIT move to just in case post-COVID, and now let's fix the internal processes. So get back to basics basically, of a better planning or internal process. So 5 very good themes you have mentioned. I think that will make a very nice blog and the video as well. But I'm gonna come back to this digital transformation. Okay, I'm writing a book on digital transformation. So we actually have a course on SCMDOJO. What is the difference? Because everybody uses this word digitalization or digital transformation, except as almost they're the same thing, but they're not. There's a difference between digitization, or digitalization, or digital transformation. So that's the purpose of the course and the book. Then there's a lot of technologies available: your blockchain, your IoT, your cloud, your 3D printing, the old school EDI and all that. Now the RPA is also on the agenda, big time coming up. But I believe when you talk about digitalization and we talk about improving communication, which is all extended enterprise integration, you have to focus on certain technologies. You can't just focus on everything. First of all, you have to understand which technology brings what value in your supply chain, I believe, and then pick the ones which are going to give you, let's call it, biggest ROI of your investment, right? So in your view, as you said, you spend, that is almost like above cost reduction agenda, and rightly so. But how the CSOs and CPOs are basically putting the money on the table first and coming up with the projects and action plans to do the transformation. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, I think if you take a look at all the different companies that are out there and technologies that are out there, yeah. I basically call it a sea of sameness. You look at it and there's so many of them, you have to say to yourself, wow, it could almost paralyze you by moving forward. You could say, wow, I'm not even sure where to turn. So I think you need to pick, a particular area that you want to improve. And then I think you need to just move forward on it quickly. And I say that because I'm very big on cost of delay, you call it. There's a metric that I call COD, and that's cost of delay. And the longer that you delay a project implementation, those savings you'll never get back. So for instance, if you're dealing with a project that's maybe $1 million savings a month, if it's delayed by 2 months, you've just lost $2 million of savings that you'll never get back. You'll never get that savings back. So I think a lot of times, we drag our feet on these, trying to pick the right ones that we want to go forth with, or, making it perfect. But I think we need to get 90% of the way there and then make it happen. And I think that's the part that stalls a lot of people, because there's so many different options. And I don't think we should boil the ocean either. A lot of times people are trying to fix everything at once. And I think it's really about spend visibility. It's about data enhancement, and it's about being able to understand to make the best informed decisions you can. And I think, action is really what's required.
The last few words you use, this data visibility, better analytics, better decision making. And that leads to the question I have, which after listening to you is, so in terms of let's call it a lot of improvements. So digitalization can bring two things. It could bring internal efficiencies, better visibility of data, better decision making, etc., or it can bring external benefits, right? Which is better customer service, better visibility of data for the customers, more response rate, or more collaboration supply. So there's internal benefits and both external benefits, right? So yes. in your view, the few last keywords you have mentioned, how you think you're gonna, first of all, prioritize those, and second, how are you going to convert them into projects? Because I believe unless you do something like a project, it doesn't happen. And I absolutely love this concept of cost of delay. Actually, I'm going to clip that. I'm going to promote this as a separate definition in a short, that how we can avoid this cost of delay. But again, the delay in decision making is the same thing, because if you see the big organization, even any organization which is $100 million plus, there's bound to be a red tape of decision making. It's not entrepreneurial enough, right? But so there's a cost of delay, but there's a cost of delay in decision making. So how we can help those CSOs in making faster decisions to gain all the benefit which digitalization will bring, both internally and externally?
Yeah,
well, I know.
Yeah, no, I understand. I would say, as we say, go back to the basics as well. I think you have to have some singles and doubles, so to speak. You have to have some quick wins. Right. And I think when you get some quick wins, then you get people on board. When people talk about, well, how do we convince, upper management that we should do this and so on? And people say, and this is what's always frustrated me over the years, we need to get a seat at the table. That really bothers me. You earn a seat at the table. No one's going to give you a seat at the table. So I think if you haven't earned a seat at the table during these last 24 tumultuous months, then there's no seat for you. And you may need to find another line of work. Because at the end of the day, we've been given every opportunity to show our value. And that value comes in a lot of different ways. And I don't think it's just by buying software and integrating software. I think it's about, again, getting back to basics and taking those items that you can bring productivity with, as you said, and maybe, putting in some technology to help with that. But there's some other unique things that can be done as well. But again, it's all about, the talent management as well, and what you're doing with your talent. So I don't want to overlook the fact that we have to have a career path for people that want to come into supply chain. And I don't think it's one of those, we'll just put the people that are at the end of their career and let's put them in procurement and they can wait it out until they retire. This is now a super highway, in my opinion, on the road to upper management. And everybody now has an appreciation for what supply chain means. But at the same time, we're all going to have to up our game on, how to manage the intricacies of it going forward. And there's not any one solution, but the one idea that I think that always comes to mind to me is you have to have a broad understanding of business to understand when you pull a lever in one area, what does it do somewhere else? And the last thing I'll say about that is what helps with the data transformation is the biggest problem that I see in business right now is opinion masquerading as fact. So there's so many people that will just make statements in meetings and they don't mean any harm by it, but they don't know how to say those three words, I don't know. So they come up with an answer, but that answer is not always backed up by data. And if it's not backed up by data, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So you got to have the data and make sure that you make informed decisions with the data. And I think that's where it all starts.
So there's a saying, I'm a quality management student as well, there's a saying of DAMing, right? Which is
Yep.
We trust on God, everybody else brings the data, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Same thing, yep. We trust on God. That's the only thing we trust on. Everything else, everybody else should bring the data. Otherwise, I won't.
Right. I've heard that in God we trust, everybody else brings data. Yeah. And then a little more sinister approach might be figures don't lie, but liars figure.
Right. So we have extended our list from the 5, which was JIT, or just move away from just in case, from cost of delay. I love this concept. Earn the seat of the table as a great challenge. I love that. You have to earn the table, otherwise, why they would give? And get back to basics and basically provide the career pathway for the new entrants, right? So very, very fantastic. In 9 points that David has been amazing. Anything else you probably say the final pass, comments to our folks? Just a bit of last advice.
Yeah, not so much just a comment. I've been inspired, quite frankly, by a lot of the work that's gone on. I see it on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and a lot of the procurement professionals that are out there, and I could name them, and there's plenty of them. But I appreciate sort of the fresh approach that a lot of people are bringing, and I think the challenge is out there for all of us, and I think we just have to embrace it right now. And I think it's our time to shine. It's never been a better time to be in procurement. And I think Dr. Eloise Epstein has said that. She's 100% right. And now's the time to embrace it. But let's not just think of ourselves as procurement or supply chain people. This is a business continuity, business operation that we have to run. And it's for profit, but at the same time, we need to satisfy our customers. There's ways to do that. It might be more difficult in some ways today, but let's not lose track of the fact that, let's make sure the basics are done properly. And then we can look for very unique solutions beyond that.
That is excellent. David, fantastic conversation. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I think the few concepts you mentioned, there's a saying, I believe, that talking to an expert for 1 hour is equal to reading 10 books, right? So maybe we discussed 20 minutes. So definitely we've read about 2 or 3 books by talking to you. So thank you for in the show. Love to have you again in future times with the new developments. And again, thank you for being part of us. And take care. And folks, you take care of yourself, subscribe our channel, and thank you for listening. Take care.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right.